Okay, so I am recording now. Just a reminder that your faces will not be recorded, but if you speak up, that your voice will be recorded, but please don't please don't hesitate to speak up. So we're going to start off with examining and looking at the fabric today. And what I was just discussing with everybody before the class started here was, fabric is this like amazing element to kind of like, it's like our daily lives, it's all around us at all times. But it also has like a really great opportunity for the education of the art student and the artist to learn how to draw something that is reactionary to a structure that is underneath it. And so in that sense, it actually mimics skin, because just like the way that skin sits on skeleton and muscle, fabric is going to react to that which it is wrapped around. And so when we're looking at fabric, and today we're going to look at fabric both with graphite and with charcoal. When we look at fabric, we have this like sensibility that the tension and the looseness is a reaction to that which it is interacting with as an underneath structural element. So here I picked these for us to draw today. And I think that one of the things too that you can do is to practice fabric is just to tie some fabric up in your house and draw it, drape it, create tension in it, fold it over some fruit and see what happens. You're going to learn so much. It's just as important as the egg, really. And so when we look at the way that fabric, like these two pieces of fabric are interacting, like there's a lot happening here that is reactionary in the same way that skin is reactionary to muscle, which is reactionary to the skeleton. So what is happening here in this image? It's quite a minimal image and it's quite beautiful in that sense. That's why I picked it. Is the relationship of tension to draping. And so like the draping parts are like the looser, softer parts. The tension are the parts where you can see the deep folds and you can see the places where fabric is laid over one another. Especially here, because I picked something that has these two tied elements to, this is two pieces of fabric that are tied around themselves, right? Like my tongue when I'm talking, sometimes it's tied around itself. And so when we come up through these areas, we can recognize, let me see what kind of drawing tool, that's good. We can kind of recognize these places, right? So like where we have these interactions of like this edge versus this edge. And then there's a little fold here, that edge, and then it comes down and then goes back up. And so, just like the way that maybe fingers would create a space like that, the fabric is creating a space. And so we can see right here, we can see, this, if we project into this, we can actually see kind of the beginnings here of a gestural hand with a thumb, and so there's so much to be learned here in terms of like how is this fabric like gripping, and how is that related to the figure? Okay. And so when we are examining the places where these interactions are occurring, we can start to really recognize that there's a lot to see here in terms of, possibility of teaching us about the figure. So when we look at fabric, we have sort of like these interactions between these harder lines, like here and here, right? These are these harder contours that are formed through tension, okay? And then we have sort of softer places like here. Those are places where we have like looseness. And so to draw fabric well, to see fabric well, what we want to sort of realize is that this line here for this edge, that's tense. And this line here, or this edge here that's tense, creates that softness. And so what you want to do, it's like looking at a wave. Where is the tension? Where is the softness? Look at this nice little soft moment here, and then it comes down and it goes really hard and tense. And so there's this duality within the fabric between, you know, the pulling and the twisting and the soft undulation of the space in between. And like, so we can see like here, like, look at that really hard line. Even this is a hard line, but this is all this soft transitionary undulation, like a wave, like an egg. And it's really sort of creating this soft roundness that is made visible. It's not just created by, but it's made visible by that like harder, tense moment. And so once we start to be able to see and analyze the relationship between the hard edge and the soft undulation, we can start to also think about planes. Here's a plane. Here's a light plane. Here's a mid-tone plane. Here's another mid-tone plane. And here's a dark plane. And so it's easy to begin the drawing with an assessment of these. I'm sorry, I'm drawing with my trackpad, but it's easy to see these hard moments. But, you know, it's a song. The hard, you know, that's the chorus. That's the beat. And then here's all the poetry. And, you know, when I work with fabric, you know, and you've seen my work, when I work with fabric, I'm thinking about the way that I display my garments, the way that we make the garments, like how does fabric become something which has emotional content? And, you know, I think about this with like hair, as someone that has drawn and painted hair for a long time. You know, it's all I drew and painted for like 6 years was hair. How does hair have emotional content? It has social significance, it has, you know, cultural significance, but it also has emotional content. And so when we look at these two pieces of fabric together, I want you to kind of project into them the places where the interaction has, you know, something a little bit emotional. Okay, so what you're going to do, we're going to draw for about 15 minutes. And those of you just watching this at home, you're just going to just pause the video. Those of you here, you can either do this digitally or you can do this with pencil. But what I want you to do is just with sort of the harder contour line we began the class with, I want you to begin to study these pieces of fabric. And then, after you've studied the fabric a little bit with contour, what we're going to do is we're going to go in then, and I want you to find the contours of planes that you see that are really visible planes. Don't worry at first about the intermediate planes. We're just looking at the really visible planes. And either digitally or with pencil, I want you to shade in the planes, okay? And this is just a study. This is just a quick exercise to help us to, familiarize ourselves with these two, almost human forms, these two human sort of fabric shapes. Yeah, mixed media paper is perfect. And today we can use, we can really just focus on using one sheet, and we're going to make 3 drawings. And so you don't have to today, we don't need to focus on making a drawing that's just as large as the 18 by 24. We're just going to make 3 separate drawings today, with the first one being this contour drawing. Questions? So your notes today, you're basically going to have 3 drawings in your notes from class today. And so what we need to do is make sure that you document. And again, it can all be on one sheet. So you could just make a documentation of all 3 sheets, all 3 drawings on one sheet. Or you can zoom in and take pictures of each one for me. I like that too. I get a chance then, sorry, I'm plugging in my laptop. I get a chance then to really see your work. So to begin with, you're going to do contour drawing of the fabric. You should have the picture on your device. So go ahead and do your contour drawing. Try to be as accurate as you can. And you're going to first analyze the contours of the fabric pieces, and then you're going to just put in the contours of the major planes of value. Okay, so 15 minutes to work on that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and work on the first drawing of the day. You've used your contour as a way to familiarize yourself with the forms. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a new boundary box. Now let me try this because it's all backwards. Let's do that. Sorry, everyone. There we go. Okay, this isn't quite perfect because I'm drawing a little bit at an angle to the drawing, but I think it'll be okay. So I have my boundary box. Looks like it's within the screen size. Okay, so here we go. Here's our boundary box. Okay, now we can, first thing to do would be to kind of like, I don't know, let's go ahead and find the center, nice and light. Okay, And then let's find the center this way. And then let's find the center that way. Okay, that kind of gives us an idea of where the center of the space is. And I want to make sure that my boundary box is equal to the dimensionality of the actual photo. So maybe I'm a little bit too long there, so I can kind of shrink that down. Okay. Now, the fabric, like if we look where it is in the space, it's a little bit to the left of the center, and there is this negative space in here. So let's just go ahead and sketch in this negative space to work with. Okay, so here's this negative space there. Okay, now we're going to come over through the tie and the knot and all that stuff. Okay, and then we're going to create this space through here. And you can see I'm just using like kind of harder angles. And again, y'all, this is just my gesture, so it's okay if this has to change. Okay, but I want to kind of like feel my way through the space. So y'all do this too. Okay, then our other piece is this is gonna come up through here. And then this is gonna come in here. Down through there. And I know it's light, and I'm sorry about that. It's kind of light on purpose, right? If it's too dark right now, I won't be able to make a successful drawing really. So I want you to keep yours light too as you start to build and push things. Okay, so there's my gesture. So don't forget a gesture is just like a mapping. It's not anything exact. It's not final. It's not finished. It's nothing but a map. So I want you to keep that line loose as you feel through the space. So the first thing I think would be really important here is to make sure that where this rod is in the correct space. So let's see if we bring this in here, and I want you to draw through what's going to be your fabric. Let's make sure that this is going to be in the correct space. Now, if you draw lightly when you get to the fabric, it doesn't matter that you draw through the fabric. Okay, we can always get rid of that later. So we want to check the proximity now. Where is this going to come? Just looking at that top contour. Okay, and then I want to check the proximity of these like ridges, these peaks to the outside edge, and it looks pretty good. Okay. Now we're going to come through now, and we're still in gesturing stage. We're going to find the angle here, and we're going to gesture in the angle there. You're not going to measure anything. You're not going to cite anything. You're just gesturing, nice and loosey-goosey. Don't make it too dark. Don't double down on Twitter as a politician might do, and then you can't do anything, right? You can't go back. You have to, all you can do then is double down even harder. You end up with a major problem that's on all sides of politics. And we have to think about having malleability built into our words and into our lives and opinions and into our drawings. There's some things we shouldn't be malleable on, and some things that, you know, maybe there's some nuance to the situation that we can learn about. Much of drawing is similar to building relationships and understanding the complexities of the human condition. So nice and loose, right? We're not getting anything finalized. We're just building. We're laying the foundation of our utopia of fabric. And it's gonna be wrong. That's the thing about gestures, is like it's gonna be wrong, but it provides you this stability for advancement of the drawing. You can see how I'm holding my pencil all the way at the back, not at the tip. I'm not doing this, right? That's going to lead me to hard lines, unchangeable lines. That's precision grip. There's only a few other creatures on the planet can do that. Most of them are primates, but not all of them, right? We also have, I've watched like otters break open like oysters with shells. Like there are other creatures, but predominantly they're primates, right? And so it's a great tool to be able to hold things that way, but it's not, you know, it's not the only way to hold a tool. Okay. So when we think about drawing, when we think about advancing a drawing, you know, this drawing's in like a really early stage, we've kind of mapped things out. Everything's really like in an early location. What we want to do is we really want to examine our subject and figure out our unit of measurement. Okay. So if we're looking here, we could say, well, that looks like a place where maybe there would be that width there. Maybe that could be an interesting unit of measurement. It's a bit too thick of a line, sorry. Don't exaggerate. There we go. I don't know what just happened, but we're gonna roll with it. Okay, this one's not broken. I don't know why that one's broken, that one's not. Anyway, so now we can say, okay, so like this is gonna be our unit of measurement. Okay, so what we need to do is think about like, okay, so how many times does that width fit into that height? Okay. And when you do that, when you look at that, what do you get? What is the relationship? Okay, so are they about equal? Well, we can actually, let's use Photoshop here. So it says it's 184 pixels. $197 pixels. So that space is ever so wider than it is high. Thank you, Photoshop. Okay, so what we're going to do is I want you to take your measuring tool, and in this case, I suggest you use your paintbrush. Okay, and I want you to measure, place the end of your tool here, and place your thumb here, and get what you think is the unit of measurement for the width. And then I want you to measure it into the height. Okay, so it should be slightly smaller in its height than it is in its width. So that means that, I've said that this space here is the bottom. And so how does that correlate to the height? I mean, to the width. So from here to here, here to here. And again, like, how do you figure out if it, on Photoshop, it was like 1.87 pixels versus 1.92 pixels. How do you figure that out? Well, it's not going to be that exact because you're doing it by sight. But you just need to know that the width is slightly larger than the height. Okay, so mine looks pretty good. If yours looks like it needs to have a wee bit of a change, then give it a wee bit of a change, okay? So now we know that this is 1.87 pixels. Let's see how long this is. So this is 306 pixels. So 1.87, 306. So we know then that this is going to go, let's find where 1.87 is. So this is about where that is. Okay, so this line there is equal to this line here. Okay, so then look, we've got this little bit of area down there, and we can see that it's smaller than the top. It's 116 pixels. All right, so we know that it's going to be shorter than the top section. Okay, so I'm going to measure here. Whoops. Sorry, my easel just fell. Technical difficulties. Okay. So I know then that this should go in here once and like about 3/4. So that looks pretty good. Okay. Now, let's go back to Photoshop. Okay, we want to find the place where that section down below is the widest section. It's definitely right at the bottom. Okay, so let's measure that space. It's 319. So again, let's go ahead and that space down there that I just made a gigantic line. So let's go over here again, 1.87 pixels. It looks like it goes right a little bit beyond the center, about there. Okay, and so then that gives us a reference to see where the height of this would fit into that. So what I'm doing, I'm sure you're starting to really get a grasp of, is I'm finding my unit of measurement. And from my unit of measurement, and then measuring that unit of measurement throughout the space, right? So this height from here to here is equal, that goes once beyond the center, looks good, and a little bit more, that looks pretty good based on what I just measured. Okay. So we kind of have an idea now of like what the bottom of that thing looks like. So then this is the little section that's above the wrapped area. Okay, that goes into here once, twice, a little less than 3 times. And this is where people get confused because they're like, how do you measure that? How do you know where those lines are when you move? You're just kind of visually remembering, if that's not annoying, because it is annoying, by the way. And so now we just want to check against the photograph, which I'm going to do with my paintbrush now. 1, 2, and a little bit. So that looks pretty good to come through this space. It could be just a hair longer here. And so as we start to analyze and look and say, okay, so like this is, this is this section in here. This is our unit of measurement. The height is the unit of measurement. Okay, then we can start to understand how then this fits into this. I kind of have a 1-to-1 ratio. Let me check that. Seems like a 1-to-1 ratio. Sorry, I need to turn off my notification. Oh, we better not do that. I don't know if that will still keep us connected. And so up here seems like a pretty good height for what we've already established as our unit of measurement, okay? So then let's find the center of this space here. And then let's say, okay, so we want to think about where is it in correlation to the center on the photograph. So to me, this looks like about the center of that space here. Okay. About there. So then we need to decide like, okay, so then this is shorter. Right? Where's the widest part? Than this. So we want to make sure then that we get the center of that space correct and get each side of that sort of like wrapping over fabric in the right spot. So let's find the center. It seems to be about here. So this here is shorter than this. Where were we? Down here? That looks pretty good. So once we have some confidence in that, we can say, okay, so we've got some confidence in that. Let's just go ahead and see if we need to make some corrections. This does seem like it needs to come down a little bit more. I don't want you to erase your problems. Okay, just leave them there. And then this needs to come down. Looks like it's coming out and going down a little bit. And then here it's kind of coming out and going down a little bit. Just keep it nice and hard edged right now. Now, if we pull that center right through here, we can see that this fold over here is towards the left of that. And you can measure like how many times does this fold here go into the whole thing. Okay, so obviously there's a quarter or so, half, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, half. So about 3 times across, this fold goes about 3 times across this whole space. One, two, three. So I just measured on the photo and I have 4. So that tells me that in here, I'm going to need to move that over a little bit and shrink that. Okay. No problem. Just did it. Gonna leave the mistake right now. I'm gonna erase it later, but right now I'm gonna leave it. And then coming down through here, we have a nice long line like that. Okay. Now, negative space in here, we're gonna check that. All right, well, there's this negative space in here. And it's gonna look like this. Okay, and I can measure the width of that negative space into its height. 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. Okay, what I measure on the photo. That's what's happening when I say that stuff. I'm measuring on the photo. So that's gonna give us a chance right there to pull straight through here, right into this edge and down, and then up. Again, you're gonna make mistakes. It's not a big deal. Remember, failure's good. So for this one, same exact thing, but this time I want you to do it by yourself. I want you to find your unit of measurement and I want you to measure through and place, find the relationship and proportional elements between the unit of measurement you select and the object itself. So go ahead and do that for the next 5 minutes. Okay, you should have that done now. So go ahead and what we're going to do, I'm going to take my eraser. I'm just going to erase right now some of the things that I'm pretty sure need to go on the outside. Now we may change that. We may have to go back and add them as we start to measure the angles. But right this second, I just kind of want to like clean up a little bit so that I have a good, strong recognition of like what I think is right at this moment and what I think will need to be possibly, kept versus changed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we can always add them back in. It's just helpful sometimes to go through and say, no, that was definitely wrong. Let's get rid of that. Okay, and then we can come back and reassess. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm thinking right now for myself. And it's cool as it looks like 2 hands, right? Holding a bar or something. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your ruler and you're going to start with the outlines, the most exterior contours. And I want you to go through and lay your ruler, your siding stick. Don't put it on the drawing and try to trace the line because you're just like move it when you're pushing against it. What you need to do is measure the line you drew, move it over and like measure it to the photo, and then move it back and measure it to the drawing. And if it's correct, you leave it. If it's wrong, you're going to go back and measure again and make the correction. Okay. You never want to just kind of like guess once. You want to try to check the measurement multiple times. Okay. And we're just sort of doing the outermost angles. Once you make a correction, go back and measure it again. That's kind of like what I was meaning earlier. Sorry, I keep doing the inside angles too. Just the outside, Vaughn, just the outside. Ow. Definitely looking forward to not teaching in my apartment. I'm not looking forward to commuting again. Now, if you have something that's curved, break it into multiple little angles. Job. Job me. Okay, and then once you've done all the exterior angles, go ahead and start to look at your interior angles. Do your big angles first, y'all. And then go through and do the little angles. Okay, and what you're doing is just going around and getting this into where it needs to go. So what I'm doing is I have my laptop right below me, like right below my drawing area, and I'm going through and I'm just measuring against the photo and pulling through that area that I see in my drawing. You know, sometimes you measure something, right, and it looks fine, and you try again and you realize, oh, you know, poo, completely wrong with that, and that's okay. Always, it's always kind of like helpful to work into something that's there. So what I mean by that is like, if you've already got a drawing, it's easier to correct than try to measure a line and put it in the right place. Okay, and just kind of go through and like, let's pull out some of these and change something. So like, we know we're going to change that. This looks a little heavy in here. With that. This looks a little, that bend looks a little low to me. I think it needs to be higher. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put in this like background value that I see. here. And I'm just using a directional line. Close my laptop so I can really get the right angle to my movement here. Okay, now this has a little bit of a light value to it too, the rods. I'm going to put that in. Like so. Okay, now the next step, we're just going to go ahead in and we're going to put in our large darks. Okay. Now, like in here, we have this little like bendy wendy fold. And so like, I don't want to lose that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. Okay, underneath that is going to be darker. Like so. Now in here, I'm going to make this darker and bring it down. And we're kind of going to do a planal analysis. So right now we're just looking at sort of like these harder edge planes. Don't worry about the tassels right now. We probably won't deal with the tassels today. Because we're kind of looking at these harder edge ones, we're not going to see a ton of that like undulation. But we're going to do that undulation. We're going to be able to really nail that with the charcoal. Just the big hard edge planes that you see. Maybe you see less than I do. Maybe you see more than I do. When you need a real dark, change how you're holding your tool. Okay, right? Explore different pressures and different angles. Okay. So go ahead and go through and do that for both of them. Okay, everybody. So what we're actually going to do is, instead of doing the third drawing today, we're going to pick up with the third drawing on Wednesday. I really wanted to end at a time today with the students who were volunteer students, and then also conceptually with y'all, where we had a little bit of a class time dedicated to the final exam. So what I hope to do is I hope to provide you with an hour right now, and that could be donated to your or spent on your final exam, or maybe it's you taking care of something else that will free up an hour later on to work on your final exam. Okay, so the idea is that, like, by ending class an hour early, and we're doing the third drawing on Wednesday with the charcoal, hopefully that's going to help you in some capacity to get an extra hour so you can do some work on your final, whether that be right now or that be, you know, this creates an hour for you where you can work on another class. And then that hour then is generated for you to use later for the final exam. So today you're going to upload your contour drawing of the fabric and your plane drawing with graphite, the plane hole analysis drawing with graphite of the fabric. And those are the only two drawings you're going to upload today for the discussion. And then please sign up for the extra credit meetings. Please make sure you do your evaluations. And as of right now, I believe, unless you've been someone who's been turning in sort of like later work and makeup work, I believe I'm up to date on the gradebook, except for those people who've turned in things like sort of from a week or two ago. Those I'll have to go back and grade soon. But I've tried to really get on top of grading. And so if you've not gotten stuff in, like, let's get it in, okay? Okay, everybody, I hope you have a good afternoon, and I'll see you on Wednesday.